Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all. It's Bear here. And I'd like to welcome you to my YouTube channel, A Box with No Lid, a channel I'm creating not just to bring the awareness of the lived reality trauma creates, but also what I've learned of my own personal experiences as I am an adoptee, and also what I've learned as a practitioner and advocate for many, many years in these areas. Now, yes, this is the next video in the adoption series, and I want to carry forward with the theme that I've been covering in the last few around why so many of the adoption relationships or long-term placements fail, why there is so many obstacles, and hopefully with that information can make a difference in the future. Because as much as I don't agree with so many facets of adoption, it is a necessary evil. And I would like to see these understandings go out there so that it improves the chances of meaningful connection in placements, in long-term placements, and in the world of adoption. And start to undo the harm that has been done for so many generations through this. Now, in this video, I want to go into one of the most devastating statements that has been used within the world of adoption placement, within placement agencies, within the medical systems that remove children for placement. Our belief that pretty much is a death knell for the relation, for the majority of adoptions because of the expectations it creates. And that is the belief that an infant or a child is a blank slate and can be molded by anybody. My adoptive parents were told that. I know of so many other adoptive parents who have come up to me over the years who I've spoken to were being told that by the placement agencies, trying to convince them to pursue accepting or working with or exploring the world of adoption as a way of fulfilling an emotional need to have children or to give back, whatever the reasons for adoption are. This statement is given as a marketing ploy by these agencies to create the illusion that this is more attractive than it actually is. Adoption and raising somebody else's child is a minefield, and we're not a blank slate. And that's the understanding that I'm going to attempt to try to explain in this video from many perspectives. When you look at the world of epigenetics, the science of epigenetics, when you look at the aspects and understandings and studies done in the generational trauma, all that filters through in how much we are born with to carry and to learn and to grow. But to put it in the simplest analogy as I can, when we are growing inside our mother's womb, everything, like I said in the last video, everything she experiences crosses the placenta. That shapes our development to be a certain style of player, to be a certain style of person, to survive in the world that she is living in. To use the analogy of a sports analogy, which is what most people seem to grasp simply, use it, okay, in the entire gestational period and all that, and a couple of generations before that, everybody in this family line was growing up to be a football player. Now, when that child is removed and they are placed with a non-biological family, say that family, for the analogy, is they are baseball. So this infant is growing up being their nervous system, their musculature, their physiology, every component of them is built to play football, a high contact sport. And then they're placed and expected to learn how to play baseball, to be part of. Stick with that analogy, as ridiculous as it is, and actually think about it in the sense of a child being raised in a non-biological family. We are geared to survive the environment that our mother, that everything that crossed the placenta prepared us for. When we're placed in a non-biological family, a lot of that stuff doesn't gel, doesn't fit. And it's up to the infant or the child to try to make sense of it in various degrees of capacity and age and so forth and so forth. That is an easier way to understand one of the biggest components of the fog, which is all our predispositions, all the things that we've inherited to be, to express, to learn, and to resolve. when you look at it from a generational trauma perspective, you can see how that plays out. Now, I've observed and known so many adoptees over the years when they've gone through the reunions, and you can see how they've played out their equivalent gendered role. Like, for guys, for guys they played out their father's role. For girls, they played out their mother's role in their life cycle and how they've lived their lives. The same style of relationships, the same relationship failures and reasons for, the same habits, the same beliefs, the same pursuits, the same passions almost. They're almost like mirrored in lives of people that they've never met. And that's why we're not a blank slate. As much as society doesn't want to believe or accept that, we're not. We are prepared and we inherit all this stuff. Science shows it through epigenetics and our understandings of what we inherit through generational trauma and how it's passed on from generation to generation. How we inherit our emotional perceptions and everything from those in our family that have gone before us. And all those predispositions. And the reason in placement having that similarity or that understanding of it is so important, because unless the adoptive family or the long-term placement family is almost identical, there's going to be issues, there's going to be conflicts, and it's going to challenge what emotional expectations the adoptive parents have that child is supposed to fulfill. And it's going to shape how close though their connection's going to be, and whether they can get to a place of working together and co-regulating with each other to create a close family unit. Can you create a close family unit in a non-biological fashion? Yes, you can. But it takes a lot of understanding and a lot of interactional understanding on all sides over a protracted period of time for it to happen. And that's what I'm trying to get through in this video, is we're not blank slates. This perspective that was put forward, it set my adoption up to fail. It set so many others up to fail that I know, because these agencies feed into the emotional expectations as a marketing ploy to hope that the adoptive parents will go through with the process, because placement agencies get paid to place children. We are a commodity. They get paid to do it. The ripple effects of that are devastating into the reality of what that placement, whether it's going to work or not. And as I said, I've had so many adoptive parents come up to me at different places and times, emailing and contacting me. I've had numerous conversations where the adoption relationship has collapsed, and a lot of it comes down to that belief that they were given, that they could shape by putting their child into all these different roles. But if you look at it in the ridiculous analogy of that child was raised to be a football player and you're a baseball, you can start to use that to see where the points of contention and conflict are. Where that child has a need to do a certain thing or to have to take a certain path, that is not naturally part of that adoptive family. We need to find ways for that to be understood and met. Now, to use another analogy, if that adopted child, came from a wilderness area, a bush area, with remoteness on properties and so forth, and the adoptive family were in the city, the outdoors and that need to have that being able to run wild and free and all that drive doesn't work in the city. Or in the city, it meets aspects that are not exactly positive. And more often than not, children that come from that base get mislabeled with ADD and so forth and so forth. It develops certain traits that become embedded behaviors, that become embedded destructive behaviors. When we just look at it as simply as no child is a blank slate, and if we understand all the things, all the aspects that they come from, the lives the mother and father lived, the lives the grandparents lived, and the lives the great-grandparents lived, you can gain an understanding of the ecology that that child was born to be part of, with all the desires, predispositions, and perceptions ingrained within the child's DNA that need to be met in some form or another. If we have that information and the adoptive parents have that understanding, there are ways you can steer the destructive components of that inheritance into more constructive ways. There are ways you can work to heal and create those connections. But without that understanding there in the first place, it's never going to happen. And once it's gone past the tipping point, it is very, very hard to recover because of the price tag that removal has. Because being removed means you're being betrayed by your biological family. When the adoption relationship starts to go south, they're betraying you. They become the physical representation of that betrayal, and it just bounces backwards and forwards to where it falls apart. There are many reasons why adoptions fail. There are many reasons why long-term placements fail, and the majority of those reasons are because of nobody wants to take the time to understand the complexity of what's involved and learn ways to work with that complexity to make it work, to create an ecology that supports all involved in the right balanced way, where at least it is growing towards a meaningful connection and a meaningful relationship or family connection. I hope this video makes sense. I love you guys' comments and feedback. Please be mindful, please be safe, and I'll see you all next time.